wind howled that night, rattling the shutters and sending shivers down the spine of every creature under the pale moonlight. But in that small house at the end of Miller Lane, the chill was nothing compared to the tight knot of fear nestled deep in Sarah's chest. She had heard the stories about what lurked in the dark, about the men who came back from the war with shadows hanging over them, their minds marred by what they had witnessed. Tonight was different. The heavy silence felt oppressive, like a live wire sparking tension across the house. Sarah sat by the kitchen table, her fingers tracing the outline of a faded photograph of her father, taken years ago when life was simpler. He stood proud in his uniform, that same mischievous grin plastered across his face, a young soldier ready to take on the world. But that world had changed him, a reality she couldn't fully grasp since he had left. Suddenly, a sound shattered the stillness. A soft but urgent knock on the front door, a rhythm that felt both familiar and foreign. Sarah's heart raced as she glanced toward the door, the soft glow of the porch light spilling into the living room like hesitant guests seeking refuge. Her mind raced with possibilities. Who could it be at this hour? A neighbor. Taking a deep breath, she gathered her courage and rose, her knees trembling slightly. With each step toward the door, memories flooded her thoughts. Her father's laugh, his stories of bravery, and the moment he handed her his old rifle for safekeeping before he left. The fear of that night mingled with a haunting sense of pride. Now she found herself, enveloped in an eerie suspense, inching towards the unknown. She swung the door open. Standing on her porch was a figure cloaked in shadows, a towering silhouette, still and quiet like a stone statue. The night air crackled with tension as she peered closer, and her breath caught in her throat. He stood there, a menacing presence, yet with a sense of calm that seemed to seep into the very ground beneath their feet. "Sarah," he said, his voice low and steady like a distant thunder. The moment he spoke her name, recognition punched through her chest. This was no stranger. It was Jack, a fellow soldier, one of the few who had returned, someone who had fought alongside her father. But why was he here? Her mind raced as dread palpitated through her veins. "Jack," she managed, her voice barely above a whisper. He stepped forward, illuminating the dim light with a rifle cradled in his arms, the very rifle her father once held. It was an unsettling image, the hardware of war at her doorstep, a tangible ghost of the past. Jack's eyes carried a weight she couldn't fully decipher, a blend of anguish and resolve as he held the rifle out to her. "I've come to bring this home," he said, his words heavy with unspoken grief. For a moment, the world around her blurred, smudging reality with disbelief. The rifle glinted in the light. Though it was not merely a weapon, it was a promise, a tether to a father who had fought valiantly yet was forever lost in the chaos of battle. She hesitated, searching Jack's face for answers. "What happened?" Panic danced in her voice, bright and piercing. She searched for hope in his solemn expression, knowing her father was a hero, a man who wouldn't let fear dictate his choices, who valued life and love above all else. Jack stepped closer, the air thickening between them as he wrestled with the memories that haunted him. "He was brave, Sarah, braver than any of us could have imagined." Sarah felt her heart constrict. Those words hung like a noose around her neck, pulling tighter until it stung. She remembered all the letters, the uncertainty woven through every line, snippets of bravery laced with hints of darkness. And now Jack stood before her, embodying that very duality. "He died saving me," Jack continued, his gaze dropping momentarily. "He took a bullet meant for me. I didn't find the words to tell you." The revelation struck her like a thunderclap. Anger flared briefly, lustrous and blinding, before being replaced with a suffocating sadness. Her father had always said they were family forged in the crucible of war, bound by blood and sacrifice. Now, he had made a sacrifice that she couldn't fully comprehend, leaving her to grapple with confusion and despair. "I want you to know he fought until the very end," Jack said, as if sensing the whirlwind of emotions tearing her apart. "Wanted to come home." The rifle felt heavy in her hands as Jack passed it to her, each piece of wood and metal a weighty reminder of loss. The storm brewing inside her threatened to erupt, and she realized she needed to hear these words, even if they cracked her heart open wide. As Jack stepped back, the weight of grief hung in the air, thick and oppressive. It felt as if they both stood at the edge of an abyssal emotional chasm where they would lose themselves amidst shadows, or pull together and rise through the pain. "I couldn't let him rest without ensuring you had this," Jack spoke, his voice resolute but edged with sorrow. Tears filled her eyes, spilling over like a flood she could no longer contain. How had he known? Had he felt the same emptiness clawing at his heart? As she took a step forward, she felt the pulse of remembrance rising within her, a flicker of warmth against the freezing chill of loss. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Jack met her gaze, and in that moment the silence of the night around them echoed with unspoken understanding. Perhaps this encounter, though cloaked in shadows, was a form of healing, a bridge forged from pain that could lead them to solace. Sarah cradled the rifle against her chest, feeling the cool wood against her skin as if it connected her directly to her father's spirit. She asked, uncertainty lacing her words. Jack stood taller, the shadows of his own battles etched across his brow. "We honor him." In that instant, their shared grief ignited a mutual purpose. They stood side by side, not just as remnants of a life marred by war, but as keepers of a legacy that demanded to be remembered. In silence, she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, a small gesture of courage. The night's air grew still, and as they walked back toward the light of the kitchen, Sarah felt an undeniable strength surge within her. Here was a chance, an opportunity not just to mourn but to celebrate, to ensure her father's story was intertwined with those who fought beside him. As she settled back into the warmth of her home, Jack began to share the stories, each tale spilling forth like a wellspring of life, moments of laughter, camaraderie, and the bond they had forged in the crucible of chaos. She listened intently, hanging on every word, imagining her father laughing and living through those moments, vibrant and full of life. The wind howled softly outside, but within those four walls, something began to change. Each story painted a picture of her father's spirit, a spirit that would not rest until it had woven itself back into the fabric of the present. Jack asked, a ghost of a grin playing on his lips. She shook her head, the image forming vividly in her mind. Her father with a laugh as fierce as fire, twirling with abandon under raindrops, fighting for joy in a world that had tried to take it from him. Jack continued, weaving tales of friendship and bravery, the echoes of their laughter filling the room, banishing the shadows that had lingered for far too long. With each shared moment, her heart unraveled a little more, unwrapping the layer of grief she had draped around her soul. As Sarah gazed at the rifle laying now on the table, it no longer felt like a relic of sorrow. It had transformed into a symbol of resilience, a reminder that every ending held a beginning, every tragedy harbored the seeds of hope. Together they forged a silent pact, bound by a shared past and a future unmarred by fear. A warrior had appeared at her door that night, not just to bring back a rifle, but to light a pathway through darkness. And there they stood, two souls connected by loss, intertwined with laughter, building a legacy that would echo for generations to come. Just like her father once had, they would keep fighting for those who could no longer fight for themselves. And as dawn's first light flickered through the windows, they knew the battle wasn't over. But they also knew that silence could be broken, and that warriors, they would find their way home. The storm rumbled like a distant war, shaking the windows of the quaint little house at the end of Maple Street. Rain pummeled the roof, drowning the quiet inside with its relentless drumming. Sarah sat at the kitchen table, her heart heavy, a feeling that had become all too familiar. She stared into the steam rising from her mug of tea, lost in thoughts that swirled like the boiling liquid. It had been 2 years since her father left for the war, and in that haze of time, life had transformed into echoes of memories and a hollow silence. She remembered his laughter, the way he'd scoop her up to dance in the living room, eyes twinkling with mischief. But since he vanished into the chaos of conflict, that laughter felt like a distant melody fading, fading. Just then, a loud crack of thunder startled her. She jumped, spilling tea on the table, the dark liquid pooling across the white fabric of her grandmother's old tablecloth. Blinking away the moment's panic, she stood to grab a towel. As she wiped, something caught her attention, A knock at the door, soft yet insistent over the chaos outside, as if someone had dared to pierce the storm's veil. Heart-pounding, Sarah approached cautiously. Who could be visiting in such wretched weather? Was it a neighbor needing help or someone else? With her father away, every distant sound sent her heart racing, each unexpected guest stirring a mixture of hope and dread within her. The door creaked open. Standing in the rain-soaked dark was a figure cloaked in a military jacket, face obscured by the shadows and the pounding rain. A chill ran down her spine, half expecting to see a stranger or perhaps a ghost from her nightmares. She asked, her voice steadier than she felt. The figure stepped forward, his jacket gleaming in the dim light from the porch. He lifted his head, revealing a familiar face, Jack, one of her father's comrades. The sight of him, drenched and stoic, sent an icy grip around her heart. She'd heard stories about Jack's stories of bravery and survival, tales that had haunted her dreams. But then she saw it, a rifle slung across his back, the very rifle her father had carried into battle. A chill deeper than the rainy night seeped into her bones. "Sarah," Jack said, his voice deep and serious, sending a tremor through her. In that moment, time froze. The world around her faded, and all that existed was the rifle and Jack's solemn expression. Her heart raced with disbelief. The bitter taste of fear gripped her throat. She wanted to scream, to ask 1,000 questions, but only silence lingered, heavy and suffocating. She managed, her voice barely more than a whisper. Each word felt like it was being pulled from the depth of a dark well. How could he bring back what was lost? Jack took a step closer, raindrops cascading off his jacket, his piercing gaze unwavering. "He fought bravely, Sarah. He sacrificed himself for me." This, he pointed to the rifle, was his. She staggered back, her heart crumbling at the weight of his words. He's gone," she gasped, tears threatening to spill. 2 years of waiting, and now the truth felt like a dagger slicing through all that hope. Jack took a deep breath, his eyes softening with empathy and sorrow. "I know," he said, each word deliberate. "But he lived a warrior's life, and this weapon is a part of him." As she stood there, taking everything in, memories surged through her mind like torrents of a raging river. The stories her father had shared, filled with tales of courage and friendship. She remembered the way he spoke of Jack like a brother, someone forged from the same steel of survival. She looked at the rifle, its cold metal glinting in the dim light of the cottage. It was heavy in Jack's hands, but somehow she found it heavier within her heart. Here was not just a weapon but a symbol of the life her father had lost, the life she had been trying to reclaim. She breathed, her fingers trembling as she extended a shaking hand toward Jack, toward her father's legacy. Jack's gaze softened, his voice steady and reassuring. "You carry his memory forward, Sarah. You honor him by speaking of his bravery, by sharing his story with those who will listen." They stood there in the downpour, two souls caught between past and present. Sarah inhaled deeply, the air heavy with unshed tears and grief, and in that moment clarity pierced through the chaos. Jack had come to her in the night, carrying not just a rifle but also a piece of her father's spirit. Overwhelmed, she took the rifle from Jack's hands, the cold wood warm against her palm as she cradled it. She asked, her voice breaking, "Help me to remember him." "Of course," Jack replied, his tone filled with conviction. As the rain poured relentlessly around them, Jack shared stories of their time in combat, moments that were both harrowing and inspiring. She listened with bated breath, her father's laughter echoing through Jack's words. Stories of narrow escapes, bonds forged in the heat of battle, and the moments where courage was found within vulnerability. With each tale, Sarah felt the heavy fog of despair begin to lift. Her father's spirit was alive in those stories, igniting a flicker of warmth in her chest. The memories of his laughter and courage intertwined with his sacrifice, painting a vivid picture of who he had been: a soldier, a father, a hero. As they spoke, the storm outside gradually eased. The windows no longer rattled, and the thunder retreated into a distant murmur. But inside, an electric charge remained, the air thick with purpose. Jack and Sarah became co-authors of a story that needed to be shared, a legacy that could weather any storm. Days turned into weeks, and together they organized a small gathering in the town square, a tribute to her father and all those who had fought alongside him. Sarah took it upon herself to set walls of memory into place, seeking stories from other veterans and loved ones of the fallen, crafting a tapestry from fragments of courage. When the day of the tribute arrived, the air was charged with emotion. People filled the square, their faces a mosaic of pain, pride, and remembrance. Standing at the podium, Sarah felt the weight of her father's rifle resting in her hands. It felt alive, warm, breathing a pulse of history. As she spoke, her voice steady and fierce, she watched as heads nodded, tears streamed, and hearts opened. She shared her father's story, intertwining Jack's tales of bravery with her own memories, keeping her father's legacy alive in that sacred space. "Together we remember," she spoke, her voice echoing with resilience. The applause that followed thundered in her chest, filling every empty corner of her heart. In that moment, she realized that the silence she once feared had transformed into a symphony of voices, united in remembrance. The sorrow dulled into a quiet acceptance, a transformation from pain to purpose. In the days that followed, Sarah and Jack became inseparable allies in a battle much greater than themselves. The stories they gathered, the lives they touched, ignited a movement within the community, a ripple effect born from the ashes of loss, forging connections that had been buried beneath the weight of grief. The rifle, once a haunting reminder, became a cherished artifact, a living testament to a life fought for and lived well. Sarah often displayed it in her home, a symbol of love, loss, and resilience, a beacon guiding her and others through the storms of life. As years passed, she continued to share her father's story, keeping his memory alive in the fabric of her days. Each story told breathed life into forgotten whispers, connecting generations in a shared understanding of sacrifice and hope. And through it all, Jack remained at her side, a quiet warrior herself, whose presence offered her solace and strength. Together, they forged a community where the past met the present, where memories became a foundation for healing. It was on one rainy evening, much like that first night, that Sarah found herself at the same kitchen table. She stared into her tea, recalling not just her father's laughter, but the laughter of countless lives intertwined with hers. An unbreakable bond formed in the crucible of sorrow. She thought of the silent warriors who, like her father, had whispered their goodbyes into the winds of battle. She felt a warmth fill her heart, a promise she had made to keep their stories alive, to shine a light through the darkest nights. And as the wind rustled outside, she whispered into the stillness, "Thank you," the words wrapping around the echoes of the past, connecting her to a lineage of courage, a heritage that would never fade. Sarah had become the storyteller, the keeper of memories, and in doing so, had transformed her sorrow into something beautiful, illuminating the path for others to follow. In the end, her father's legacy was not just a tale of loss, but a celebration of life, a reminder that even in silence, a warrior can rise, and in remembrance there is always hope. The thunder growled low, rumbling like an angry beast waking from hibernation. Those sounds should have felt familiar to Sarah, but tonight they carried a weight that made the hairs on the back of her neck stand on end. She stood by the window, clutching a mug of lukewarm tea, staring out as branches whipped wildly in the wind. The streetlights flickered, their feeble glow barely cutting through the darkness of the storm-blanketed neighborhood. Was it just the weather, or was something otherworldly stirring in the tempest? She had been on edge all day, an inexplicable sense of dread creeping through her bones. 2 years was a long time to wait for someone to come home. 2 years since her father had left for the war. 2 long years of holding her breath, waiting for a knock at the door, a letter, news, anything that felt like he was still out there, fighting for her, for their family. Suddenly there it was, a knock, soft, almost tentative, but distinct. It pierced through the cacophony of rain and wind, making her heart skip. She instinctively turned to the door, the shadows in the room stretching and twisting with her movement. Was this it? Was someone finally coming to tell her the truth? Taking a deep breath, she walked toward the door, each step weighted with uncertainty. As she reached for the knob, doubt clawed at her. What if it was bad news? What if the person on the other side bore tales of tragedy? Could she handle more sorrow? With a decisive twist, she turned the knob and pulled the door open. The storm raged outside, stealing her breath in an instant. Standing before her was a figure cloaked in darkness, drenched from head to toe, rain cascading off his shoulders. but it was the silhouette that sent her heart racing, familiar but haunting. The green military jacket, marred and weather-worn, felt like a ghost of a memory. "Jack," she whispered, her voice wavering like a flickering candle. The name echoed like a challenge against the storm. "Sarah," he replied, his tone low yet steady, like the calm before the chaos. There was a weight in his eyes, something profound and heavy that made her instinctively take a half step back. Jack took a moment before he spoke again. He shifted slightly, and that was when she saw it, the rifle, her father's rifle, glinting wickedly against the stormy backdrop. Time froze, the world around her dimmed, leaving just Jack and that rifle. It felt like a ghost had stepped through her door, not just Jack, but the entire essence of her father. Fear twisted in her chest. She could hardly draw a breath. Her father had left with that rifle in hand, its barrel forever etched in her memory. The way he told her stories as he polished it spoke of love, honor, and sacrifice. She managed, shaking her head, a flame of denial igniting within her. "He can't be gone." Jack's eyes were filled with a quiet sorrow that twisted like a knife in her gut. "Sarah, I'm so sorry. He fought for us, for you." She couldn't hear him anymore. The storm raged louder, drowning out everything he said. She felt the walls of her home closing in, each thud of her heart echoing like a countdown to despair. She instinctively clutched her arms around herself, the pain twisting like a vine in her stomach. She breathed, tears pooling in her eyes. Jack stepped closer, his face now illuminated by the harsh light of the porch, the anguish reflecting in his features. No one wanted this. He was a hero. Something inside her cracked, a raw chord of grief erupting through her defenses. She gasped, clutching the doorway like it was the only thing grounding her. Why did he leave? Jack hesitated, the silence stretching painfully between them. Sometimes courage comes at a price. In the thick of battle, he saved my life. He took a shot meant for me. A chill washed over Sarah, cold as steel. The weight of his words pressed down on her like a thumb on a bruise, each syllable digging deeper. "He died a warrior," Jack continued, his voice steady despite the storm. Tears flowed freely now, the dam shattering as the truth washed over her. Her father had given everything, all for the hope of a better tomorrow. She felt so small, like a speck in the universe, lost in an ocean of sorrow and sacrifice. Jack stepped forward again, gently placing the rifle into her trembling hands. At that moment, it felt alive, a conduit of energy flowing through her, begging her to remember its story. It was a heavy reminder of the man who had fought bravely, the man who had held her close and whispered words of love before he marched out into the unknown. "Carry him with you," Jack urged, his voice firm yet tender. "He would want this," she whispered, her voice breaking. "By gathering those who loved him, other warriors like him, share their stories, honor them." Jack's eyes glimmered with determination as the rain drummed relentlessly around them. In that moment, something shifted inside Sarah. The pain twisted and morphed, like a dark cloud beginning to disperse. A silent warrior had stood before her, offering not just her father's rifle but a lifeline, a way to confront the abyss of grief. Clutching the rifle against her heart, she nodded, a glimmer of purpose sparking within her. "Okay." Jack stepped back, finally releasing the weight of his presence as he nodded in quiet approval. The storm outside began to wane, a hint of calm wrapping around them as if the universe were coaxing them toward healing. With the sun's first rays piercing the darkness, Sarah knew what she had to do. Over the next few days, she reached out to everyone who had known her father, gathering stories from neighbors, friends, and fellow soldiers. Each conversation felt like threading a needle through fabric, painful but also beautiful, stitching together a tapestry of love and remembrance. Those stories poured into her life like sunlight breaking through clouds. Men and women recounted tales that painted vivid images of her father, a man who had danced through the rain, who had laughed heartily and cared deeply. They spoke of his unwavering spirit, how he had brought joy and comfort in the darkest hours. And amidst this, Sarah felt herself transforming. The pain still lived within her, but it wove itself into something richer, a resolute reminder of the love that thrived even in death. She began to see the rifle not as a weapon of sorrow, but as a symbol of resilience, of fighting for love, of holding onto hope against all odds. The day arrived when she would host a gathering in the town square, a tribute to her father and all the warriors who had fought beside him. She prepared every detail, pouring her heart into this moment, ensuring each person felt invited to share their tales. It was a night adorned with flickering candles, the soft glow illuminating faces filled with longing and remembrance. When Sarah stood before the crowd, the rifle held close to her chest, the world quieted. She thought of her father, of Jack, and of all the stories that had found their way to her heart. "We gather here not just to mourn our losses," she began, her voice quaking but unwavering, "but to celebrate the lives lived fiercely, the love that connects us beyond time." Stories flowed forth like an eternal river, memories shared between sunlit laughter and bittersweet tears. There were tales of bravery, camaraderie, and love that transcended the battlefield. It painted a rich and vibrant tapestry, enveloping Sarah in warmth and strength. She smiled through tears as Jack stood at her side, quietly nodding in solidarity. They had become partners in this journey, united by grief yet forged deeper by purpose. Together, they breathed life into those memories, intertwining them to create an enduring legacy. With every story shared, with every laugh and cry that echoed through the square, Sarah felt the darkness lifting. The moon hung high above, casting its silvery glow, reminding everyone that light follows even the deepest shadows. The memories spun around her, wrapping her in a blanket of love, a love fierce enough to break through the pain. The evening ended with warm embraces, the atmosphere charged with a flickering hope that rose like a phoenix. People spoke of how they would carry on their memories, how they would ensure that the silent warriors were never truly gone as long as their stories lived on. Days turned into weeks, but the impact lingered like a fresh spring breeze. Sarah found solace in sharing her father's stories in local schools and community centers, inviting others to do the same. She understood that everyone harbored their own silent warriors, each woven into the fabric of their lives, just waiting to be honored. Jack stayed close, a steadfast presence by her side, and with every shared memory, they became not just storytellers but advocates for healing, a beacon of resilience. They created a community that welcomed those with heavy hearts, a sanctuary shaped by courage, love, and the promise that no one would face their battles alone. The sun would set and the stars would emerge, casting a gentle glow on the memories they cherished. Sarah often found herself standing at the threshold of her home, the rifle a silent guardian by her side. The darkness had once threatened to swallow her whole, but through pain came understanding, through loss came growth. And as she glanced up at the sky, she realized her father was never truly gone. His essence lingered in the stories told, the love shared, and the laughter echoing through her heart. Together, they had created a legacy, a living memory that would shine brightly, guiding others through their darkest days. A silent warrior had appeared at her door, carrying more than just a rifle. He had brought a message: strength, courage, and love endure, even in the face of profound loss. And in that truth, Sarah had found freedom, a way to soar above the storm, forever cradled in the warmth of their shared stories. Thunder rumbled like a distant battle drum, shaking the old house at the end of Willow Lane. Rain poured down in sheets, drenching everything in its path. Inside, the atmosphere felt heavy, filled with the weight of grief that had settled like dust in the corners since her father left for the war. Sarah sat in the dim light of the kitchen, watching the raindrops race each other down the window, her heart tangled in memories of a man who used to make everything brighter. A sudden knock echoed through the silence, piercing through her thoughts like lightning. It was unexpected, jarring against the backdrop of the storm. Who could possibly be visiting on such a tempestuous night? Dread gripped her as she stood frozen for a moment, considering whether to answer or retreat into the shadows. She took a deep, steadying breath, prepared for anything or perhaps nothing at all. With a shaking hand, she opened the door. The wind howled, but it could not drown out the sight before her. A figure cloaked in darkness, water dripping from his worn jacket, face shadowed yet somehow familiar. As the porch light flickered, recognition surged through her, a blast from the past that made her pulse quicken. She whispered. Her voice barely cut through the storm. He looked up, and his brown eyes reflected the sorrow of countless unspoken words. "Sarah," he replied, his voice low and filled with an intensity that made her heart race. He stepped closer, the light catching a glimmer of metal slung across his back. It took her a moment to comprehend what it was, what it represented. Her father's rifle. She felt her breath hitch. The question tumbled out, clumsy and desperate. Jack shifted, the rain still battering against him, yet he seemed so much larger, so much heavier with grief as he took a deep breath. "I came to bring you something," he said, stepping fully into the light. The rifle gleamed ominously, yet it felt familiar, like the scent of her father's cologne still lingering in the air. Her heart sank as reality crashed down around her like waves against jagged rocks. "No," she began, shaking her head as panic welled up inside. Jack's expression was serious, and she feared what he might say. "Sarah, he fought bravely. He saved my life." Jack's voice broke. "He didn't make it back, this is." The words hung in the air, heavy and cold, as if the very walls of the house pressed in around her, tightening their grip. Her father, a hero, had always spoke of bravery with a smile, but she had never prepared for the day that bravery would cost him everything. "You can't be serious," she managed, tears threatening to spill over. Jack closed his eyes for a moment, his pain palpable. "I know how hard this is, but he wanted you to have it. He always talked about you, Sarah." The truth washed over her like a tidal wave, crashing against the fragile barriers she had built to protect herself. The memories came flooding back, the stories shared around the dinner table, the laughter mingling with the scent of her mother's cooking, her father's warm embrace. Each memory felt like a knife twisting deeper into her heart. Sarah gripped the door frame, searching for something to steady her. Why? Why did he have to leave? Jack stepped forward, the weight of something more pressing behind his steady gaze. "Sometimes promises can't be kept. He thought of you every moment, Sarah." The rain pelted harder against the roof, a symphony of chaos that mirrored her inner turmoil. She felt like a marionette, strings pulled taut by grief and anger. She asked, her voice trembling as she gestured toward the rifle, a ghostly figure of everything she had lost. "Honor him," Jack whispered, his voice thick with sincerity. "Tell his story." Sarah took a step back, feeling overwhelmed. How could she do that? The weight of loss pinched at her, suffocating. But something twisted inside her, an ember of resolve stirred. She grabbed the rifle. It was cold, but beneath that coldness, she could almost feel her father's touch. "Together, we can make this right," Jack said, slowly nodding. As she stood holding that rifle, Sarah felt a strange ache in her chest mixed with a flicker of strength. This was no longer just her burden. It was also Jack's and that of everyone who had fought alongside her father. This was about remembrance, about carrying forward the legacy of love and sacrifice. When they stepped back inside, rain still hammering down outside like an unrelenting army, Sarah felt a sense of purpose settling over her. They began to talk, the words flowing between them like a river finding its course. Jack shared stories of her father's stories that weren't just about the war, but reflected the man he had been. There were tales of laughter amidst danger, moments of camaraderie forged in the fire of combat, memories of her father's warmth and humor illuminating dark days. In these stories, a part of her father seeped back into her life, the cold grip of despair releasing, giving way to a flicker of hope. Over the days that followed, Sarah poured her heart into a project. She decided to gather stories, memories, and words from everyone who had known her father. It became her mission to honor him, to share his legacy while healing her own wounds. As she reached out to neighbors, friends, and fellow soldiers, their eyes reflected a haunting mixture of loss and admiration. Every conversation became a thread in a vast tapestry of memory, a vibrant mix of voices that painted a picture of who her father had been in life. Laughter mingled with tears as they told of his kindness, strength, and love. One evening, while poring over old photographs, Sarah stumbled across a letter her father had written shortly before he deployed. It was addressed to her, the neat handwriting instantly recognizable. Her breath caught as she began to read. "Sarah, if you're reading this, it means I'm far away," he had written. Tears flowed freely down her cheeks as she continued reading. "Be brave, my little warrior. Never forget that love can bridge even the greatest distances." As those words washed over her, she felt renewed, like a flower breaking free from the frost. Love was not lost, and her father's fight, though it had ended in tragedy, had also forged connections that would carry on through generations. Emboldened, Sarah knew she had to create a gathering, a tribute where stories could bloom in the soft light of remembrance. She reached out to her community, inviting everyone to honor the fallen heroes, to share their tales of love and bravery. The day of the gathering arrived, and Sarah stood at the community center, her heart pounding in anticipation. The walls were adorned with photographs, memories captured in frames that reflected laughter, sorrow, and resilience. At the center stood her father's rifle, displayed as a symbol of love, loss, and courage. As people filtered in, their faces etched with stories, Sarah felt a sense of belonging emerge amidst the grief. She welcomed each person, her heart swelling with gratitude. Jack remained by her side, a reassuring presence, offering silent strength through the storm of emotions swirling around them. When it was time for people to share, Sarah took a deep breath, gripping the podium as she steadied herself. "Thank you all for being here," she began, her voice trembling yet fierce. As stories unfolded, laughter intertwined with quiet sobs. Memories spilled forth like an open floodgate, pouring out the richness of lives lived fully even in the shadow of loss. Men and women recounted battles fought, both on the field and within their hearts, where each victory counted. Through it all, Sarah felt her father's spirit surrounding her, resonating strongly with each shared memory. She could almost hear his laughter in the echoes of stories told. Here, in this space filled with love and remembrance, she realized that though he was gone, he would never truly leave her. As the sun dipped low, casting a warm glow across the room, Sarah stepped back from the podium, heart soaring. She knew she had begun to weave a tapestry of love, binding lives together, creating something beautiful from the ashes of sorrow. Finally, when the stories began to quiet, she looked around the room, feeling a wave of warmth wash over her. A sense of peace had settled where chaos once reigned. Throughout the weeks that followed, the gathering turned into a tradition, an annual reprieve where stories would be shared, lives would be remembered, and connections strengthened. Each year, Sarah felt herself continuing to be woven into the fabric of her father's legacy, a living testament to a love that surpassed time. One evening, she stood outside, rifle in her hands, looking up at the night sky. Stars twinkled like distant echoes, and she felt her father's presence wrap around her, filling her with warmth that chased away any remnants of sorrow. "Thank you, Dad," she whispered into the night, her voice mingling with the gentle breeze. And just like that, in that tranquil moment, she realized that a silent warrior had indeed appeared at her door, carrying more than just a rifle but a key to healing, a reminder of love's eternal embrace. In choosing to share his story, she had learned to embrace her own, turning pain into purpose, fear into courage, forever honoring the silent warriors who walk alongside them in both life and memory. The night was quiet, yet it felt alive, buzzing with an energy that sent shivers down Sarah's spine. It was just past midnight, rain beat insistently against the roof, a rhythmic reminder of the world just outside her door. But inside, all she could hear was the soft break of her own breath and the occasional creak of the old house settling. That night, the air was thick with memories of her father. It had been nearly 2 years since he went off to war, leaving behind echoes of laughter and warmth that felt impossibly distant now. She stared out the window, her mind adrift in memories of him, stories of bravery and tales woven with laughter. Yet as each day passed without news, a heavy sense of loss wrapped itself around her, drowning out the joys of the past. Then came the knock. It was a soft but firm sound, sharp enough to cut through the ghostly silence wrapping the house. Her heart raced as adrenaline surged. Who could be at the door at this hour, especially with a storm raging outside? She stood, muscles tense, grappling with confusion and dread. Taking a deep breath, she approached the door, her feet almost floating across the floor as if they were reluctant to face whatever reality lay beyond. Throwing open the door, the wind howled, sending a chill through her bones. A figure stood shrouded in darkness, drenched from head to toe. Even in the weak light of the porch, she recognized the silhouette. "Jack." "Sarah," he said, voice steady yet heavy with something unspoken. Her heart lurched. Jack had been a friend of her father, a comrade in arms, but it was the bundle he carried, wrapped in a damp cloth, that caused a tidal wave of emotions to crash over her. Her father's rifle, the same one he had promised to always return home with. The question hung unasked, suspended in the stormy night air. Fear gnawed at her insides, raw and aching as she took a step back. Jack didn't hesitate. He stepped forward, finding shelter beneath the porch. "I'm so sorry, Sarah," he said, his voice a blend of sorrow and strength. "I came to bring you this, your father." Time seemed to shatter, fragments of reality spinning around her in dizzying circles. "No," she protested, the words spilling out like a raw wound. Jack's eyes were filled with unshed tears. "He fought bravely. He saved my life." He faltered, looking away for a moment, grappling with memories that were not his alone. She pressed, her heart pounding like a war drum. She clutched the doorframe, feeling the weight of every word hang heavy in the air. "He took a bullet meant for me," Jack finally said, voice thick with pain. "He died a hero, Sarah." With those words, the dam broke. Hot tears streamed down her cheeks, mixing with the rainwater that splashed onto the porch. It felt like the world was collapsing in on itself, and she stood in the center, watching everything fall apart. She choked out, desperation wrapping her voice tightly. "I couldn't," Jack said, his own resolve crumbling. "We lost him out there, but he always spoke of you. You were his light, the reason he kept fighting." Those words were both a comfort and a dagger. How could love transcend the abyss that now lay before her? She took a deep breath, clutching the edge of the door, feeling the wood dig into her palm. She asked, gesturing weakly towards the rifle that Jack held. Her voice trembled like autumn leaves caught in a storm. "Honor him," Jack replied, his voice dipping low but filled with authority. "Tell his story, keep his spirit alive." Framed in the doorway, the storm behind them rumbled as if echoing her turmoil. In that moment, a sense of something burgeoning within her, a flicker of determination. She realized that the tragedy didn't just belong to her. It belonged to everyone who had cared for her father. With shaking hands, she took the rifle from Jack, a cold, lifeless piece of machinery suddenly imbued with vivid memories, with a love that reached across the gap of mortality. "I'll do it," she whispered, a soft promise carrying through the storm. Jack nodded, relief washing over his features as he stepped inside, dripping rainwater onto the floor. Together, this would not just be her battle, it would be theirs. Over the next few days, Sarah threw herself into her father's memory, reaching out to everyone who had known him. She wanted to gather stories, moments, anything that would help piece together the man who had become a shadow in her life. The stories flowed in like a nourishing river, filling the parched earth of her grief. She heard from neighbors who shared laughter-filled afternoons, friends who recounted moments of unyielding bravery, fellow soldiers speaking of camaraderie forged in the fire of war. Each narrative was a stitch in a quilt, weaving together the colorful fabric of her father's life, creating a flicker of light in her dark existence. Every night, she listened to Jack recount tales of her father, how he had the uncanny ability to lift spirits even in the direst of situations, how he had cracked jokes in the trenches, spreading laughter like a balm over deep wounds. And each story became a lifeline, tying her heart to the essence of the man she loved so fiercely. One afternoon, while combing through old photographs, Sarah found a letter tucked between the pages of a book. It was written in her father's neat handwriting, a message directed specifically to her. Her heart raced as she unfolded it, fingers trembling with anticipation. "Dear Sarah," it began, "if you're reading this, I want you to know that being away from you is the hardest thing I've ever done. Always hold on to hope, love, and laughter, even in the darkest times." Tears ran freely down her face, each word a tribute to the bond they shared. The letter was both a comfort and a call to action, propelling her toward healing. With renewed vigor, Sarah organized a gathering, a tribute to her father and the warriors who fought alongside him. She envisioned it as a space for connection, a sacred arena where stories could be shared freely under the soft glow of candlelight, where silence could be replaced by laughter and camaraderie. When the day arrived, the community center brimmed with friends, family, and fellow veterans. Sarah's heart raced as she looked around, a mixture of nostalgia and nervous energy brewing inside her. Together, they would breathe life into whispered memories and honor the legacy of courage and love that transcended loss. As people entered, she welcomed each face, embracing the stories they brought with them. Jack stood at her side, his quiet strength a source of comfort as she prepared to stand at the podium. The air crackled with emotion, a fusion of sorrow, resilience, and hope binding everyone in a collective heartbeat. When it was her turn to speak, Sarah took a deep breath, gripping the sides of the podium as she scanned the crowd. "Thank you all for gathering here today," she began, her voice trembling yet steady. She began recounting tales of her father, feeding off the love radiating from the audience. Each story she shared was met with soft nods, tears, and at times, laughter that resonated deeply. She spoke of the man who had been her entire world, but more than that, she spoke of the facets of him revealed through the eyes of others, unearthing pieces of his spirit that she never fully knew. As the tribute progressed, one by one, others began to share. Old friends stepped forward to speak, recounting childhood adventures, the infectious laughter that seemed to lift the heaviest of spirits. Fellow soldiers stood to share stories from the battlefield, the bravery that touched their lives in unimaginable ways. It was like watching a tapestry unfold, vibrant and vivid, colors intertwining under the soft flicker of candlelight. The stories wove in and out, creating a living memorial of her father's life, celebrating the man he was, the silent warrior who had fought for love and unity, even across the distances of battle. And amidst the stories, she felt him, an ethereal presence woven into the very fabric of the room. The tears flowed freely, but they were not just tears of sorrow. They were tears of gratitude for the love that had kindled lasting memories. With each voice that rose to share a tale, Sarah felt the weight of her grief lifting, transcending into something pure, something that felt alive. The sadness was still there, yes, but it no longer clung to her like a shadow. Instead, it transformed into a fierce pride, a recognition of the legacy her father had left behind. As the gathering began to draw to a close, Sarah looked around, hearts connected by invisible threads of shared experience. She felt a sense of hope bubbling to the surface. Together, they had created a sanctuary, a living testament of love woven from stories and bonds, spiraling outward into the infinite. "Thank you," she said, her voice breaking with emotion as she surveyed the crowd. "Thank you for sharing in this celebration of life, love, and remembrance." As the gathering concluded, people exchanged stories, lives intermingling once more. Sarah felt an overwhelming sense of unity in that space, an unbroken circle of support, love, and bravery. Over the days and weeks that followed, Sarah continued the work she had begun. She volunteered at veteran support groups, listened to others share their stories, and invited people to connect in meaningful ways. Every moment of sharing felt like an honor, weaving her father's legacy into a larger tapestry of resilience. Looking back, she never would have imagined that a silent warrior could open the door to so much healing. The night Jack appeared, rain-soaked and solemn, had marked the beginning of a journey, a path that would lead her to face her grief head-on, embrace love, and celebrate life unashamedly. Now, when she saw the rifle resting in her home, it no longer felt like a weapon of sorrow, but instead served as a touchstone of memory. Within it was not just the pain of loss, but also the power of love, a reminder that life continues to flow even amidst tragedy. As Sarah stood one evening, gazing at the stars twinkling above, she could almost hear her father's laughter carried on the wind. It was a soft reminder that love transcends even the greatest distances, that his spirit thrived in the stories shared and the lives touched. In that moment, she wrapped her arms around herself, envisioning her father standing beside her, pride radiating from his gaze. They were connected, woven together in the rich tapestry of memory, a silent warrior still walking with her in every story shared, in every life impacted. She had found her way through the storm, transformed by love into a beacon of remembrance, knowing that through sharing their stories, silent warriors would never truly fade away. In life, in love, and beyond, they would always remain. The midnight hour hung heavy in Sarah's home, thick with shadows that whispered of memories long past. The only sound was the steady rain drumming against the window, a rhythmic reminder of a world that spun on, indifferent to the turmoil in her heart. It had been nearly 2 years since her father left for the war, and every day since had been a delicate balance between hope and despair. She wrapped her arms around herself, lost in the echoes of his laughter, the warmth of his embrace lingering in the crevices of her mind. But as the weeks turned into months, that warmth became increasingly eclipsed by the cold reality of his absence. The empty chair at the dinner table served as a reminder of a life suspended in time, waiting for a hero who never returned. Then came the sound of a knock at the door that shattered the night's oppressive silence. It rapped like a heartbeat, urgent and insistent. As Sarah turned toward the door, a mix of anxiety and curiosity churned in her stomach. Who could it be at this hour? A neighbor, or perhaps a visitor she dreaded more than anything. Taking a deep breath, she approached the door slowly, her steps muffled by the thick carpet. Every instinct told her to turn back, to retreat into the shadows of her home. But something pushed her forward, the need to confront the unknown. When she opened the door, a gust of wind rushed in, almost knocking her back, and there stood a figure cloaked in darkness, rain cascading off his shoulders. As the porch light flickered, she recognized him instantly. Jack, her father's friend. He looked weary, the lines on his face etched with grief and guilt, shadows lingering around his eyes. "Jack," she breathed, a wave of disbelief crashing over her. He stepped closer, his voice low and steady, a calm amidst the tempest outside. He lifted his arm, revealing what lay bundled against his side, the unmistakable shape of her father's rifle. Her stomach dropped. "No," she choked out, panic overtaking her. "Not like this." But even as she spoke, the realization sank in, pulling her deeper into despair. Jack's expression was sorrowful, the weight of unspoken truths hanging heavily in the air. "He fought bravely. He saved my life, Sarah." He paused, swallowing hard. Time seemed to shatter in that moment. The world outside faded away, the sounds of the rain dimming as her heart began to pound in her chest. She stumbled back, gripping the doorframe as if the very foundations of her world were crumbling. She implored, her voice rising in pitch. "I wish it wasn't true," Jack's voice cracked, a tremor running through the heaviness. "But he died a hero. Suffering." The word echoed around her like an anchor, dragging her further into despair. "He promised me he'd come home." Jack's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "He loved you, Sarah. He thought of you every moment. That's why he fought. This rifle, it's a piece of him." As that last sentence hung in the air, a hurricane of emotions surged within her. The warmth she once felt when thinking of her father twisted now into something raw and painful. She felt like a marionette with its strings cut lost, flailing in a storm of grief. She whispered, gesturing toward the rifle, a cold piece of metal that now felt impossibly heavy in his hands. "Honor him," Jack urged gently. "Tell his story, keep his spirit alive." Through the haze of pain, something flickered within her. A spark of defiance mingled with grief. With shaking hands, she took the rifle from him, its cold metal pressing against her palm, and it felt as if a piece of her father had returned to her. "I will," she said, her voice steadying as realization dawned. Jack stepped into the house, the warmth wrapping around them as they both stood at the threshold between the past and the future, two souls bound by the same love and loss. For the next few days, Sarah poured herself into gathering stories of her father's life. She reached out to family, friends, and fellow soldiers. Each conversation was a thread woven into a fabric rich with memories, forming a portrait of the man she had lost. Neighbors recounted the times her father had shared laughter over backyard barbecues, while family members spoke of his unwavering commitment to always protect those he loved. And fellow soldiers, their expressions heavy with understanding, shared tales of valor that filled Sarah with a bittersweet pride. Every shared story was like a lighthouse guiding her through the fog of despair. She discovered the depth of her father's spirit was far more expansive than she'd realized. Each memory was a piece of a puzzle, a glimpse into the man who was both a soldier and a loving father. One evening, while sifting through an old trunk in the attic, she stumbled upon a collection of letters and photographs. Opening the first letter, she found her father's familiar script. "Dear Sarah," he began. "If you're reading this, it means I'm away, fighting to make the world safe for you and everyone we love." Her heart swelled as tears streamed down her cheeks. His words wrapped around her like a warm embrace, reinforcing the bond they shared, even across distant lands. She could almost hear his voice in her head, encouraging her to be brave, to hold on to hope. As she collected more stories and letters, she began to see a way forward. She envisioned hosting a gathering, a tribute not only for her father but for all those who had fought and made sacrifices. A chance for stories to be told, for love and honor to fill the air. When the day arrived, the community center was adorned with lights and photographs, memories dancing in the soft glow. Sarah felt a whirlwind of excitement and anxiety as people began to arrive. Each face bore tales of both pain and resilience, uniting them in a bond that transcended loss. During the gathering, Sarah stood at the podium, clutching the rifle that had seemed so cold just days before. "Thank you all for being here today," she began, her voice steady but quivering with emotion. As she spoke, the stories poured out like an open floodgate. She shared her father's journey, interwoven with Jack's memories, all their laughter dimmed by the shadow of loss. In those moments, the room came alive, not just with grief but with joyous celebration of lives well lived. One by one, others joined in. Friends shared tales of backyard adventures, neighbors told of her father's unyielding spirit, and fellow soldiers recounted moments from the battlefield, a laughter shared amidst the horrors, a bond cemented in the fires of war. With each memory recounted, the weight of sadness began to lift. Instead of feeling trapped in sorrow, she felt buoyed by the love that filled the room. It was as if her father's spirit had woven itself into every story, transcending the boundaries of life and death. By the end of the gathering, Sarah felt an extraordinary sense of peace enveloping her, a space where love and loss coexisted harmoniously. She realized that memories could be the bricks used to build a bridge over the abyss of grief. As the evening wound down, Jack stood beside her, his presence a silent strength. They exchanged glances, both recognizing the profound impact this tribute had made. "Thank you for reminding us what matters," he said quietly, his voice thick with emotion. In that moment, Sarah understood. Grief and love were not opposites but were intertwined, guiding her through this journey. She had begun to turn her pain into purpose, crafting a living legacy of her father that would continue to grow through each story shared. In the weeks that followed, Sarah immersed herself in honoring her father's memories, volunteering at veterans organizations, sharing her experiences with those who understood the depths of loss. The rifle, now resting prominently in her home, no longer felt like a burden but a beacon of resilience. Each day, she ventured deeper into her community, fostering connections and inviting others to join in honoring their silent warriors. The gathering had become an annual tradition, drawing together families who took cherished moments to remember and celebrate their loved ones. On clear nights, Sarah often went to the park, rifle in hand, looking up at the stars. Each twinkle reminded her of a story yet to be shared, a life passing through her heart. She felt her father's spirit beside her, his laughter echoing softly in the breeze. He was proud, she felt it in her bones, and every story she told was another brushstroke on the canvas of his legacy. With every passing day, she continued to overcome the shadows of sorrow with the brightness of love, not just her own, but the love of an entire community coming together to heal. As the seasons changed, so did she. The silent warrior who first appeared at her door became a rallying cry in her heart, a push to continue honoring those who had fought bravely and sacrificed for the love of others. And while nights still felt heavy, she now recognized that it was in the stories shared, the laughter exchanged, and the memories rekindled that she could truly find solace. The journey wasn't easy, but it was hers to traverse, a path strewn with the echoes of lessons learned and love shared. In that great tapestry of life woven by moments, Sarah had discovered that even in silence, a warrior's spirit lived on, urging her to tell their stories, to embrace the scars of the past, and to walk forward hand in hand with hope. Each step taken became a celebration of life, a reminder that love endures, forever intertwined with those who had come before. A rain-soaked evening descended over Millville, the kind of night where shadows grew longer and whispers of the past seeped into every corner of the home. Sarah stood by the window, her heart heavy, gazing into the murky darkness beyond. The world outside felt as if it were holding its breath, just like her. She could feel it, a tightness in her chest that wouldn't fade. 2 years had passed since her father walked out the door, a soldier heading off to fight a war she still couldn't fully understand. Those 2 years stretched endlessly, filled with unanswered questions and empty promises. The echoes of his laughter haunted her memories of backyard barbecues, dance parties in the living room, and bedtime stories spun from the fabric of his imagination. But now his absence was an aching void, a reminder of dreams interrupted and a life put on hold. Thunder cracked overhead, a low rumble that sent a shiver down her spine. Just then, a knock at the door pierced through the storm's roar. It was not the first time she had jumped at a sound tonight, but this knock felt different, heavy and deliberate. Anxiety twisted within her as she approached the door, her instincts urging caution. Who could it be? A neighbor, a telemarketer turned ghost, or something much worse that she couldn't bear to contemplate. With an effort that felt monumental, she gripped the doorknob and pulled it open. Outside stood a figure shrouded in darkness, rain cascading off a military jacket and pooling at his feet. As the porch light flickered, she recognized him immediately. It was Jack, one of her father's comrades. "Sarah," he said, his voice low and constrained, like someone carrying the weight of the world. "Jack," she breathed, disbelief and dread intertwining as her heart raced. He stepped forward, a heaviness to his movements, the air around him thick with sorrow. In his arms he cradled something wrapped in cloth, and a chill crept into her bones. "I brought something for you," he murmured, and with a slow, deliberate motion, he revealed the unmistakable shape of her father's rifle. The sight struck her like a punch to the gut. The memories flooded back in a torrent, each wave crashing harder than the last, her father polishing the rifle in the living room, his eyes sparkling with pride as he recounted stories of bravery and camaraderie. "No," she gasped, shaking her head slowly, tears brimming in her eyes. "He can't be gone." Jack's expression darkened, the shadows of memory passing over his features. "I'm so sorry, Sarah," he said, his voice breaking. "He fought bravely and saved my life." Time itself seemed to pause. Sarah felt the ground shift beneath her, her world spiraling into chaos. "What do you mean?" She was trembling now, the rain soaking her feet as anxiety surged through her veins. Jack took a deep breath, trying to find the right words. "He was a hero, Sarah. He thought of you up until the very end. He took that bullet for me." Her heart shattered at those words, the daggers of grief and anger stabbing into her chest. She wanted to scream. She wanted to run. Instead, she stood frozen, grappling with the depths of despair. Why had he left her? Why had he not come home? She finally whispered, gesturing to the rifle still cradled in Jack's arms. Jack's eyes softened, a mixture of empathy and determination swirling within them. "You honor him," he said firmly. "Tell his story. He fought for you." Burden. The word hung in the air, resonating deep within her. A flicker of something, a spark ignited inside Sarah. She thought of all the stories her father had told her, the laughter that once filled her home. "I will," she said, her voice steadying. As if a switch had flipped, the tension between them shifted. Jack stepped inside and they stood together at the threshold, a place where grief met hope, a bridge connecting the past to an uncertain future. For days that followed, Sarah poured herself into an endeavor that began as a way to escape the clutches of sorrow, but blossomed into something far more profound. She reached out to everyone who had known her father, neighbors, friends, fellow soldiers. Each conversation was a thread weaving a rich tapestry of memories. One neighbor spoke of how her father had spent weekends helping to fix broken fences, sharing grins and stories of their childhoods. Another recalled the time he had organized a fundraiser for a local charity, filling a community hall with laughter and warmth. Fellow soldiers recalled moments of joy amidst the chaos of war, how her father had cracked jokes in the trenches, lifting the spirits of everyone around him. Each story revealed a new layer of her father, and with every narrative, the heavy weight of sorrow morphed gradually into something lighter, more bearable. Amidst this, Sarah stumbled upon the old trunk in the attic, cluttered with relics of a life once lived. Dust motes danced in streams of fading light as she opened it, revealing a collection of letters, photographs, and mementos that whispered the past. Among them, she uncovered an envelope addressed to her, her father's familiar handwriting gracing the front. Inside was a letter filled with love and bravery. "Dear Sarah," it began, "if you're reading this, it means I can't be there. But please believe me when I say you are my light. I fight for a better world for you, one where you can dream without fear." Hot tears streamed down her cheeks as she read those words, and for the first time in a long while, she felt a flicker of warmth in her heart. Even the pain felt beautiful, connecting her to her father in a way she had almost thought lost forever. With this fuel igniting her spirit, she envisioned a gathering, a tribute to her father and to all the silent warriors like him who had fought valiantly. She pictured a place where stories would intertwine, shared under the warm glow of candlelight, a sanctuary for love, laughter, and every emotion in between. When the day of the gathering came, Sarah felt a whirlpool of excitement and nerves swirl in her stomach. The community center shone brightly, adorned with photographs and lights, each flicker representing a life lived fully, even amidst loss. She could hardly believe how many had come: friends, family, and neighbors, all tied together by a single common thread: love. As guests filed in, Sarah stood at the entrance, greeting each person with a smile, each embrace filled with understanding. Jack, standing by her side, offered silent support, grounding her as she prepared to share the weight of her father's legacy. The air felt electric, charged with a sense of unity and collective healing. When it was her turn to speak, Sarah took a deep breath, clutching the rifle now resting in her hands. "Thank you all for being here today," she began, her voice trembling but strong. "We gather not just in memory of our loved ones, but to celebrate the lives of our heroes." As she spoke, stories began to unfold like petals blooming beneath the sun. Her words wove together accounts of her father's unwavering strength, kindness, and the laughter he shared. Friends stepped forward, sharing their own cherished memories, and amid the tears and laughter, the gathering blossomed into something truly beautiful. The stories filled the room with warmth, each voice a note in a symphony of love and loss. As she listened, Sarah felt the heavy weight of grief start to dissolve, replaced instead by an overwhelming sense of gratitude and connection. This was not just about mourning. This was a celebration of lives lived fully, of the extraordinary impact her father had made in the world. After several heartfelt tributes, Jack finally stood up. He spoke about the battles they had fought side by side, illuminating the camaraderie that had formed amidst the chaos. "He was a good man, a true warrior," Jack said, his voice resonating with strength. "And he went above and beyond to protect me, to protect everyone." As his words hung in the air, an unexpected calm washed over Sarah. This was a light she had almost forgotten, a beacon guiding her away from darkness. She realized she was not alone in this journey. They were all connected through the shared threads of loss and love. The gathering continued, stories unfurling like stars emerging in the night sky. And in each story shared, Sarah felt her father's spirit entwined in the fabric of those memory stories that would forever bind them together. When the evening finally drew to a close, Sarah found herself enveloped in a wave of warmth and belonging. The room was filled with a mixture of laughter and tears, and as she looked around, she saw faces lit with newfound purpose. The shadows had not disappeared, but they no longer felt suffocating. Now they were simply reminders of the love that endured. As the guests bid their farewells, Sarah's heart swelled with gratitude. She hugged Jack tightly, feeling the strength of their shared experience. "Thank you," she murmured, her voice filled with emotion. Jack smiled, his expression a mix of relief and understanding. "We're in this together, Sarah." In the days that followed, Sarah found herself stepping into new roles as an advocate for veterans and their families. She organized additional gatherings in the community, welcoming others to share their stories, creating a cycle of healing that seemed to gain momentum with every meeting. Each story she heard transformed her grief into something actionable, something that she could share with others who needed support, just as she had. The rifle, once a haunting reminder of loss, began to symbolize resilience. It became a tool for connection, a way to reach out and gather others who shared similar struggles. The seasons changed, and with them, Sarah blossomed in ways she never thought possible. The garden she had neglected for so long began to thrive again, bursting forth with flowers as if mirroring her journey. Every bloom was a reminder of something beautiful emerging from the soil, where once there had been only anguish. On clear nights, she often found herself standing in her yard with the rifle by her side, looking up at the vast expanse of stars. Each twinkle was a memory, a testament to her father's spirit that seemed to wink back at her, urging her forward. The pain still lingered, but now it felt more manageable, woven into the journey of acceptance and love. One night she stood outside looking up at the stars, the warm breeze rustling the leaves around her. She felt him near her, a soothing presence against the backdrop of the night sky. The memories of her father, his laughter, warmth, and endless stories swirled around her like constellations. "Thank you, Dad," she whispered, the words escaping her lips like a prayer into the stillness. "Thank you for all the love." In that moment of reflection, she understood grief was not a singular journey. It was a shared path involving everyone who had known her father. Each shared story, every laugh and tear that fell became a step toward healing. What first felt like a burden had transformed into a legacy, a gift that transcended the boundaries of life and death. The silent warrior who had appeared at her door was not just a man with a rifle, but the embodiment of love that life could never extinguish. He had gifted her not just with memories, but with the strength to turn pain into purpose. As dawn broke, casting its gentle golden light over Millville, Sarah took a deep breath. She felt lighter, the shadows no longer threatening to swallow her whole. Instead, she embraced the journey ahead undaunted and fiercely alive, forever honoring the warrior in her heart. Each step forward became a celebration, not just of her father, but of life itself, radiant and resplendent. And she knew in her heart that he would always walk beside her, a silent guardian whispering strength into her spirit as she forged ahead into a future shimmering with possibility. The doorbell rang, a sharp sound slicing through the quiet of the late afternoon. Sarah's heart pounded as she paused, pencil hovering above her sketchbook. She hadn't been expecting anyone, and that ringing felt foreign, unnerving. The light outside dimmed, clouds rolling in, casting shadows over the room. She set her pencil down, feeling a knot of anxiety twist in her stomach. Who could it be? The last thing she wanted was unexpected visitors. With a deep breath, she walked cautiously toward the door, each step echoing like a drumbeat in her mind. As she reached for the doorknob, memories flooded her thoughts. Her father's hearty laughter, his comforting presence, his stories about bravery. He was gone now, fighting a war that felt endless. The fear of losing him had morphed into a haunting silence, a void that swallowed her whole. With a determined push, she opened the door, and the world outside nearly took her breath away. Standing there was a figure drenched from the rain, face obscured by the shadows. Rain poured steadily, soaking into the ground, coating the figure in a glistening sheen. "Sarah," came the gravelly voice, and she recognized it instantly. It was Jack, a friend of her father's, his presence heavy with an unspoken burden. She gasped, disbelief washing over her. He stepped into the light, revealing a countenance marked by time and sadness. In his arms, he held something wrapped in a muted cloth. Her heart raced as she squinted, trying to discern what lay hidden within. "Jack," she said, the tension rattling her voice. He hesitated, almost as if the weight of each word was too much to bear. "I came to bring you something, your father." Before he could finish, her eyes caught sight of the rifle. Wrapped carefully in the cloth was her father's rifle, and a wave of nausea surged through her. "No," she whispered, stepping back. "Sarah," Jack said, his voice thick with sorrow. "I'm so sorry." Those words sliced through her, and her throat tightened as if a vice were closing in. She cried, the raw emotion spilling over. "He promised he'd come home." Jack's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "He fought valiantly." He hesitated, his gaze falling to the ground. "He took a bullet for me." Time stilled. Sarah felt like she was teetering at the edge of a precipice, terror gripping her, pulling her deeper into despair. Her mind raced with disbelief. How could this be? "No, no, no," she murmured, shaking her head furiously. Sarah, Jack said softly, stepping forward, but she recoiled, feeling the weight of panic tightening around her chest. Don't, she yelled, her voice breaking. She wanted to retreat back into her memories, where her father was still alive and laughter still filled the air. Jack stood silently, the rifle still cradled in his arms like a piece of lost history. In that moment, Sarah saw not just a weapon, but a symbol of everything she had lost, the promise of a father who would always be there. She gasped, her hands trembling. "Honor him," Jack said, his voice steady despite the storm brewing around them. "Tell his story." Each word landed like a stone in her heart. She felt the weight of grief and loss bearing down on her. She looked at the rifle, at the man who had once filled their home with laughter and warmth. She asked, her voice quaking. Jack took a deep breath, a flicker of determination in his eyes. "You're not alone in this." For a moment, doubt flickered within her. But as she looked into Jack's eyes, she saw understanding, a bridge connecting them through shared pain. The air swirled with tension. She could either drown in sorrow or fight back. With shaking hands, she reached out, taking the rifle from Jack's hands. It felt cold and foreign, yet she could almost sense her father's presence humming through it, urging her to remember the joyful times, the lessons learned. "Thank you," she whispered, a tremor of resolve beginning to weave its way through her. Jack nodded, relief washing over his weary features. They stepped inside, the warmth of the house contrasting sharply with the storm outside, where rain continued to pour relentlessly. In the following days, Sarah threw herself into a mission, one that began as a means to escape her pain, but soon blossomed into something much more profound. She reached out to neighbors, friends, and fellow soldiers, gathering stories about her father. Every conversation opened a window into a world she had almost forgotten. Neighbors recalled the way her father would take the time to help them fix their car or share a smile and a wave whenever they passed. Friends painted a picture of a man full of life, playful, affectionate, and devoted. And the tales from soldiers like Jack were both uplifting and heartbreaking, filled with experiences that reflected her father's bravery, a laughter shared amidst chaos, camaraderie built over the ashes of battle. Each tale was a shard of light that began to illuminate the darkness she felt lingering in her heart. One afternoon, while rifling through old boxes in the attic, Sarah stumbled upon a trunk hidden beneath a layer of dust. She pried it open, excitement thrumming in her veins. Inside, she found a collection of letters and photographs, artifacts from a time that felt so far away. As she unfolded an old letter, her breath caught in her throat. It was addressed to her, the familiar handwriting bringing tears to her eyes. "Dear Sarah," it began, "if you're reading this, it means I'm away, fighting for a world that you deserve. Always hold on to the love we shared. It is stronger than anything else." Her heart felt like it might burst. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she realized he was still with her in spirit, urging her to keep moving forward. The love poured into those words wrapped around her, a fragile yet unbreakable bond. With renewed determination, she set the trunk aside and envisioned a gathering, a tribute not only to her father, but to all the silent warriors who fought for love and life. She wanted a space where stories could intertwine, where laughter and tears could live side by side, a sanctuary for those who had suffered losses too great to bear alone. The day of the gathering arrived, and Sarah felt a whirlwind of emotion fill her as she stood at the entrance of the community center. It was decorated with photographs and candles, each flicker representing a life lived fully. People began to arrive, their faces etched with understanding, some familiar, some strangers bonded by the weight of grief. As they entered, Sarah embraced each one, welcoming their shared stories. Jack stood beside her, a stalwart pillar of support, grounding her as she prepared to share. The air crackled with anticipation, a haunting blend of sorrow and hope that tied them all together. When it was her turn to speak, Sarah took a deep breath, the rifle held firmly in her hands. "Thank you all for being here," she began, her voice steady but quavering. As she shared the stories she had gathered, a wave of emotion swept through the room. Laughter echoed from the memories shared, anecdotes of how her father had brought joy to so many despite the darkness lurking outside their doors. Each story painted her father in colors she hadn't fully understood before. Yes, he was a soldier, but he was also so much more. With each name spoken and each story told, she felt the heavy burden of sorrow begin to lift. Instead of feeling trapped in a cycle of grief, she found strength shared strength. The room swelled with warmth, brioche threads of connection weaving through the crowd, binding them all together. As stories continued, Jack stood up to share his experiences, reliving the moments of spirit and kindness that made her father remarkable. He was more than just a soldier, Jack said, his voice soaring above the murmurs. By the end of the gathering, Sarah was overflowing with gratitude, her heart full. She knew they had all forged a bond that would transcend the darkness surrounding them, a community united in love and remembrance. As the night wore on, laughter mingled with tears, bittersweet but beautiful, rich with meaning. This journey hadn't been just hers to bear. It had become a collective endeavor, a testament to love that outlived loss. But just as her spirit swelled with hope and belonging, a shadow crossed the room. The sound of footsteps echoed as a stranger stepped through the door, a man wearing a dark coat, eyes solemn, carrying an envelope. The atmosphere shifted, a palpable tension hanging in the air. "Excuse me," he said, his voice cutting through the laughter like a knife. The room fell silent, every eye turning toward her. Sarah took a breath, the air suddenly heavy as she stepped forward. "I'm Sarah," she said warily, the smile fading from her face. The stranger held out the envelope, his eyes reflecting compassion and concern. "I have something for you," he said quietly. Time stood still, the weight of uncertainty crashing over her. 1,000 questions surged in her mind. How could this be? The room faded into the background, their faces blurring as she reached for the envelope. With trembling hands, she pulled it closer, her heart racing. She could feel the familiar urgency in her chest. She opened it, the edges worn and faded. Inside lay a letter handwritten, just like the others, filled with words that could change everything. "Dear Sarah," it began, and she felt a chill race down her spine as she read the first line. "If you're reading this, it means you haven't lost hope." But the words that followed shifted her world, revealing secrets, truths she had never known, and an ending that changed the very essence of everything she believed. She read the lines, her breath quickening as the truth unfolded with each stroke of ink. And in that moment, as the flickering lights illuminated the room and everyone waited in anticipation, Sarah realized that this was no simple letter. It was a key to the very heart of her father's battles, one that would redefine everything. Suddenly, a curtain was drawn back, opening a door to a truth long hidden, the kind that would force her to confront not only her past but the world that lay ahead.